Hello and welcome to my show, Nutrition for Health, Sex, Weight and Wellbeing on UK Health Radio, your global feel-good radio. I'm Dora Walsh and I've been working in the field of natural and functional medicine for over 20 years. I'm a qualified nutritionist and nutritional therapist working from a functional medicine perspective to help my clients overcome their chronic health concerns. Things like hormonal imbalances, digestive problems, chronic fatigue, autoimmunity, skin concerns, low immunity, overweight, hard to lose weight, and more. You can find out more about me on my website, nutriheal.net, and also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Well, this week, we're going to be talking about the importance of light for your health and well-being. And you might not already know, if you don't already know, the quality and the quantity and also the timing and the type of the light you're exposed to can drastically impact your health for the better or for the worse. Today's modern living and our addiction to smartphones, iPads, computers can have really devastating consequences on our health and our sleep and our well-being, and all because we're being exposed to light which we're not used to. It's a type of light that we haven't evolved to be able to deal with. Light affects our body's biochemical, hormonal, and circadian rhythm. It's an absolutely fascinating phenomenon. Light, it's composed of tiny particles called photons, and these particles travel all throughout space in the form of waves. And each wave has a unique length and strength, and each wave will have an impact on you and your health. The spectrum of light ranges from short and powerful to long and weak, and the distance between those peaks of all the wave is known as wavelength. Those wavelengths of light are measured in nanometers, and they vary greatly. So we have the visible spectrum of colors that we know. So red light, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. But there's also an invisible spectrum of light, like infrared and ultraviolet. And each wavelength of light has its own unique properties and applications, and they all affect us, and they affect our circadian rhythm. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The importance of light, all the different types of light, and how they impact our health and well-being, and how we can maximize our exposure to the right light and reduce our exposure to the wrong type of light in order to be the healthiest versions of ourselves. This week I'm talking to Daniel Ebbett. He's the founder and CEO of Block Blue Light. He's an international blue light blocking expert. And you can find out more about him and his company on his website, blockbluelight.co.uk. And you can also find out more on Facebook and all the Instagram and Twitter by finding them at Block Blue Light Official. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thanks, Dora. I'm really honored to be here and looking forward to talking about all things light and health.
I absolutely love this topic because I'm a nutritionist, but then I read something that you said that nutrition isn't food, it's light. So I have to talk to you about this, and you're going to have to explain to me why during the show. But before we talk about that, let's talk a bit about your story and how you came to become a light evangelist, an expert in light, and founding your company, blockbluelight.co.uk.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it's actually started out of a kind of a personal health struggle, I guess. About sort of 8-9 years ago, I had just graduated university and I was just moving into the working world, and I had these big dreams and aspirations of going into the corporate world and climbing the corporate ladder. So I started a job actually in Sydney, Australia at the time. And I was working in what you'd call a typical kind of skyrise office building. So I had really a lot amount of fluorescent lighting. And then the nature of my job was on screens all day as well. And at the time, I considered myself a pretty healthy guy. I was getting right into actually health and wellness, really saw the benefits of actually looking after myself, my physical and mental body. A lot of time in the gym. I was actually competing in powerlifting. But yeah, very quickly shifting my lifestyle into working indoors all day on screens. And then going from that kind of environment to the gym at night under lighting there, and then coming home and having to do after hours work because the graduate kind of got lumped with the work that needed to be done out of hours. So I was actually in the IT field. I very quickly noticed that my health actually started to deteriorate quite quickly, and I was getting quite severe migraine attacks during the day and severe insomnia at nights. And I couldn't quite understand what was happening, sort of thing. So I did what most people would do, is I went to my local doctor to sort of just find out what was going on. And they just proceeded to kind of like do what I didn't really understand the model then, but it was more like trying to take a Band-Aid approach. So I kind of got prescribed a whole bunch of different off-label medications. So kind of like antipsychotics, antidepressants, all sorts of different sleeping drugs and stuff. And none of them really seemed to help. And ultimately, my health continued to spiral downwards, particularly with sleep deprivation over the months. That really started to dysregulate my hormones as well. So I was getting quite in a desperate state. And it kind of got to the point where I think I went back to my doctor once. And this was like after having tried I think it was like 6 or 7 different prescription drugs. And then they're kind of just like, it was like the default. And I think they just said like, it must be in your head sort of thing. Like it's not a real thing. Like there actually isn't a problem. And at that point, I couldn't really accept that. Like I was pretty desperate and I was feeling pretty shocking by this point. So I just decided that's not working for me. This model's not working for me. So I just decided to start researching things myself and started trawling the depths of the internet. And back then there wasn't the vast range of information or people talking about these sort of things over the internet. So it was actually quite difficult to find anything, but I did stumble upon a neurosurgeon in the US called Dr. Jack Kruse. And he had some fascinating concepts that really just interested me a lot. And he was talking primarily about essentially the impact of light on our health and how it affects and governs so much of our biology. And pretty much how like the environments we're in are not essentially becoming very unnatural, and it's actually unnaturally then governing how our biology operates. And so I just was really interested in his concepts, and it was actually very, very difficult to understand what he's talking about. He had some very deep blogs talking about quantum biology and biomechanics physics and all sorts of stuff. And so for me, I just really, really took a deep dive. And what I then started to do was actually apply some of the learnings into my own lifestyle. Because I very quickly learned that the lifestyle I was living was very unnatural in terms of light exposure. The light we get exposed to outdoors from the sun is a very, very different spectrum of light than what we get exposed to indoors under LED or fluorescent lighting. The light from outside in the sun is what we call full spectrum light. So that means it's balanced with all colors of the rainbow, and it's also got infrared and UV light. And when you come indoors, they actually strip out a lot of the spectrums of light, and it's got primarily a high amount of blue light and green light in it, which gives it that bright white kind of look that you see from indoor lighting. And that in itself has a lot of different biological impacts, not having that full spectrum of light. So I started to apply some concepts where I was bringing down the intensity of the blue light indoors and in the office environment I was in. And so the way I did that is I started searching around for a pair of kind of eyewear or glasses I could wear that would actually reduce the blue light down. Now back then, the concept of blue light glasses didn't even exist. So I actually trawled the internet again and found that there's a particular pair of safety glasses that you could buy that would do this. So I ordered them in from America, and they took like a month to turn up, and I started wearing these big ugly safety glasses in the office. People thought I was very, very strange wearing them. But it was the first thing I did that really started to actually make a change, right? I could see that my sleep started to improve, and particularly when I wear them at night, I put them on post sunset and leave them on right up to bedtime just to ensure that there wasn't any kind of unnatural light signals coming into my eyes. And very quickly, my health started to turn around. It did take a while to unravel like a year's worth of sleep deprivation and migraines. But from that point, I had no desire to start a business or anything. I continued to work my career in IT for 12 years, but I just sort of thought to myself, I was like, I can't be the only one that's have gone through this. Like, I'm not living an unusual lifestyle. It was considered quite a normal lifestyle. So I'm sure there's other people that are having similar effects, but don't really make it past the going to the doctor and getting a prescription drug sort of thing, just because I'm quite motivated to research and understand things. So I then just decided, I'm just going to order in 50 pairs of these big, ugly orange safety glasses and start talking about it, start a website up and just start trying to educate people. And if anyone wants to listen, I'll sort of let them know. So that was kind of the inception of our business. And ever since then, I've just been really, really passionate about continuing to look at the research on light and understand, how it impacts us. And particularly from 8 years ago till today, we've had a rapid increase or advancement in what I call like the digital age, and like devices and screens and lighting is actually infiltrated our lifestyle so much more than it was back then. So I just felt like a calling to continue down this journey, because it is like probably more important for people to understand what I consider like light hygiene more than ever.
I love this story, and it's so great you made that connection between the symptoms that you were experiencing and the lack of good light in your life, being exposed to the detrimental light in the office. But not everybody is probably as awake as you are, Daniel. So how is it now when you started up your company and started talking about this and maybe just selling your product? How did you start explaining this to people? I mean, are people really waking up to this now and realizing that there is a strong connection between the lights and their health symptoms?
Yeah, well, the way I really started to trying to educate people was the connection between light and sleep, because we all sleep, right? And a lot of people in insomnia and sleep problems are really starting to become quite common. And so being able to sort of make the link between light exposure and sleep is quite an easy one to break down for people to understand. So that's kind of where I would come in first. And it's quite an easy concept. So the sun is our natural light source on Earth, and that is the only source of natural blue light in our environment. So that type of light is obviously balanced, like I said, as a full spectrum type of light. But blue light is ultimately, we have special receptors inside our eyes and they're not visual receptors, but they are still photosensitive receptors that will respond to certain frequencies of light and send certain signals into the brain. So these receptors will actually respond to blue light, and blue light is responsible for sending a signal to the brain that it's daytime, because the sun is the only natural source of that. So that kind of signaling tells the brain it's daytime, and that will then instruct the body to secrete particular hormones to keep us awake and alert during the daytime. So that those particular hormones are known as cortisol and adrenaline. So those are what are responsible for making sure that we're awake and alert during the daytime, and that the secretion of that is governed through the receptors taking in blue light during the day. Now, where this whole system gets messed up is when we get into nighttime. Most of us don't live in the dark, so we all turn on our lighting in our homes. That ancestral system of light coming in the eyes and our ancestral brain doesn't understand the difference between blue light from artificial light source and blue light from the sun. So it just understands that if there's blue light in the environment, it means it's daytime. So then it continues to keep your wakefulness hormones elevated right into the night, as long as it's getting signals of blue light. So I like to say all the lights in your home are like artificial suns, but your brain doesn't understand the difference between an artificial sun and a natural sun. The system that's designed does exactly what it's designed to do and keep you awake and alert based on the frequencies of light it's receiving as a signal. So what that means then is, if we sit in our homes being exposed to blue light into the past sunset, our brains continue to instruct our body to produce wakefulness hormones. And then when it comes to go to sleep, it hasn't released, because it will suppress sleep full hormones or hormones that are designed to make us go and start to wind down, which is the common hormone that is known as melatonin, which is typically labeled as a sleep hormone. So that will be suppressed by up to 80% by being exposed to blue light in the evenings. So that's why essentially people then start to feel wide and awake right into the early hours of the night, late hours of the night sort of thing, because they continue to be stimulated through those light frequencies. So a lot of people don't even realize that just literally the lights in their home that they keep on to continue to be able to see through the night are literally stimulating them and keeping them awake.
I guess in the old days, people would have just gone to bed when the sun went down and they were kind of in rhythm with nature. They would get up with the sun, go to bed when the sun went down. Or then maybe at night they might have had a few candles. But the light today, as you say, we're experiencing longer periods of time right up into the night. And it's blue light that's coming out of those light bulbs. And it's stimulating us in the same way that the sun would be stimulating us in the day. And I guess that's fine in the day if we want to be awake and alert with cortisol and there's adrenaline, etc. But at night, that can lead to these problems, as you mentioned, the insomnia and not being able to wind down because you're not making enough of melatonin, which is an amazing hormone for sleep and also a very important hormone as an antioxidant and to regenerate ourselves. So lack of sleep can lead to so many health issues and disorders in the long term, like Alzheimer's and dementia, due to lack of that antioxidant melatonin and all the other damage that it can cause. So it seems like unless we're going to go to bed with the sun going down, we need to limit this detrimental blue light in our home, that we are exposed to frequencies that are more beneficial. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And just a point to touch on that you mentioned, like earlier, our ancestors would have just gone to bed when the sun set or worked in with the light cycles. Well, what's actually interesting is you look at the type of light sources that have been used over in the past. It's, if we go way back to caveman days, they have fire for light source, and that's got orange, yellow, and red light frequencies in it. It has no blue or green light frequency, so it was never a stimulating type of light. Then I guess we moved into like candles, and so the same idea. There is actually no blue light in the candle light sources that we would be using past sunset. And then if we actually step again into the advent of electricity, the initial type of light sources that we used and we continued to use up until about 10 years ago. So it's quite a modern problem we've got. That type of light source was incandescent lighting. And that was actually very, very low in the blue light frequency. It did have some blue light in it, but it was very minimal in comparison to the red light frequencies and the oranges and the yellows, and there were the predominant wavelengths in the incandescent lighting. That's why it has a more warmer look to it. If you remember the old type of lighting, it was a lot more of a yellower type of light source. So then we kind of, the technology evolved with LEDs, which is now the predominant light source that we have in our homes. It's actually got all the red and the yellow and the orange stripped out of it. It has very minimal of those frequencies in it. And it has a lot of the blue and green light frequencies, which are the stimulating ones. So it really became the problem really started to ramp up just in the last 10 years, where we just made a drastic shift in the type of lighting that we've been using in our homes, in our workplaces. It's really everywhere now as well, like car headlights, street lights, all our monitors, screens, TVs. So pretty much most artificial light sources have moved over to this newer technology. But that kind of like the frequencies or the wavelength output from that type of light source is really not biologically appropriate for us to be exposed to in the evening.
I find what you're saying so interesting in terms of having a light source that is biologically appropriate, and the fact that these light bulbs have changed so much in the last 10 years. Because I must say, I do remember those old style light bulbs. And then in the last few years, I've noticed that they have changed, and they're these longer lasting light bulbs, which we all think is great for the environment. But by the sounds of it, they're not so great for our health because they have a different wavelength. I wonder why they've changed the wavelengths in the light bulbs and how that's affecting us. And we're going to talk a lot more about that, so the different wavelengths and the colors and what they mean, after a few messages from our commercial partners.
UK Health Radio. the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
You're listening to Dora Walsh on UK Health Radio on my weekly show, Nutrition, Health, Perfect Weight and Wellbeing. We're talking about the importance of light for your health and your wellbeing. Expose yourself to the best wavelengths of light and avoid the negative ones that can have devastating impacts on your health. I'm talking this week with Daniel Ebbett, founder and CEO of Block Blue Light, international blue light blocking expert. And you can find out more about him on blockbluelight.co.uk and also follow them on Facebook, Twitter, etc. at Block Blue Light Official. Now, Daniel, you were talking about the different wavelengths of light and the lights that are most biologically appropriate for our body, because from what you're saying, there are different wavelengths. Some of them are more beneficial, some of them are not, and that our light bulbs have changed in the last 10 years. And this has led to a number of health problems like insomnia, all of these different health issues that you've mentioned. Why have those light bulbs changed and what are they doing to us?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one when you look at why we changed the light bulbs, or all our light sources changed. So they were changed because the older type of lighting we used which is traditionally known as incandescent or halogen lighting. And that type of lighting is what's called a heat source type lighting. So in order for it to produce light, it needs to heat up a filament inside the light bulb to produce light, and it produces heat as well. And because it produces heat, it's very energy inefficient, which means it has to use a lot of energy to actually create that light. And the life cycle of those types of lights aren't very long. The replacement cycle is quite high. So in the name of sustainability and looking after the planet, I guess that there was a shift to go, can we make a longer life light source that's much more energy efficient? And that's what the LED lighting is. It's very energy efficient. It uses a fraction of the energy that the older type lights do, and they last a lot longer. However, I think what's happened is they've made this shift with just said, okay, well, this is great lighting. It's sort of the impact on the planet is much less using this type of lighting and much less energy production. However, they've just completely disregarded that shift to that type of lighting has a complete different spectrum of light that completely biologically impacts us completely differently. So whilst we've looked after the earth and the planet with green, sustainable lighting, we haven't looked after the people that are living on it, which is, I think, quite a large disconnect and a completely overthought move when kind of rolling this out and infiltrating pretty much everyone that lives on this planet will be now impacted through being exposed to this type of light source, because it's just everywhere. And it's not only actually humans that are impacted, it's every living thing actually has a response to different light frequencies. So yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I think there needs to be there's a way that you can actually still make things energy efficient and long life, but actually manipulate the actual frequencies and the type of light that's coming out to actually not have such a disconnect in terms of the type of light we should be exposed to at the different times of day.
What are you doing to protect yourself from these biologically inappropriate light forms that are coming at you every day? What can people do?
Yeah, well, so first of all, like the type of light we get exposed to or should be exposed to does change based on the time of the day. So there's not a blanket, we should be exposed to a certain type of light all day and all night. That does alter as the day goes on, because we should really be trying to align the type of light we're being exposed to be similar to the different phases of light that are outside from the sun, which does alter from the morning into the evening. So ultimately how it should look is during the daytime, we should be looking to try and get exposure to a more full spectrum type of light, a type of light that has more than just the predominant blue and green light frequencies. So they do exist. It is a type of lighting, which is full spectrum lighting, which will actually have it is still an LED light source, but it actually has all of the spectrum of light in it in a relatively even balance. And it still does look like a relatively normal light source. So that is a really, really good light to use during the day, because that type of light really helps regulate your energy levels, your mood levels. Full spectrum light coming into the skin and the eyes will upregulate the neurotransmitters serotonin and dopamine. So that's very important to get exposure to full spectrum light, whether that be from outdoors or an artificial full spectrum light indoors, so you can ensure that you actually do feel good and you do have lots of energy and feel motivated as well during the daytime. And then when we shift, when we're coming later into the day, into the evening, that's when we need to actually ensure that we're using a light source that's starting to lower the blue light down and then completely eliminate it in the evening, because that's when you don't want exposure to those light frequencies, as we earlier explained, how they actually stimulate you and continue to tell your brain it's daytime. So you're really looking for a light source that completely will eliminate the blue light spectrum. And what that typically looks like from a proper light source that's actually created that way will be a very warm amber, orangey kind of colored light. However, you can't just go to, which is a common question, to like the hardware store and buy like just an orange light bulb, because they actually still have those frequencies of light in it. Whilst it has that color that you're after, it still doesn't eliminate certain frequencies. So you've actually got to look for a light source that is designed in a way that it's going to completely eliminate that blue light spectrum. So when you're using it in the evening, there is none of that signaling coming in of daytime to the brain.
Got you. So it's basically about making sure you've got the right light at the right time. It's not just the same light all along throughout the day.
Yeah, that's correct. And the way I like to think is the best way is to it's not never going to be perfect, but trying to kind of align with the different phases of the sun and trying to align the type of light you're being exposed to be close to that. So once the sun sets, there is no blue light. So you're trying to replicate that same idea in the evening. During the day, there is plenty of blue light from the sun, but it's balanced with all the other colors. So you're really trying to replicate that as well during the daytime.
Yeah. Where can people get these types of light bulbs?
So we do have them. So we've spent a number of years working like with lighting engineers to work out how we can, what we kind of say is like, we've talked about like the LED light source being quite harmful to us for the reasons we talked about, but it's not actually the LED light technology itself. So we've worked a number of years to reverse engineer LED lighting to actually take away or just manipulate it in a way so it's not so harmful. So we do have a full spectrum LED light source that we can use during the daytime. And so that's just been changed in the way of the type of frequency it emits. So that will emit all of the light spectrums. And then within the same light bulb, we've actually allowed it so you can actually switch it and you can change it during the day. So it is controlled through your light switch. You just turn it off and on again, and then it will drop out the blue light spectrum. So you can kind of go from day into night within the same lighting, which is very, very helpful. So you've got your light source during the day, and then when you're coming into the evening, you can actually just switch it and it will eliminate those frequencies of blue light that we don't want in the evening. And then you can continue to use your light source in the evening and it not be stimulating. So those are really good options. And we have a whole bunch of different types of lighting with those principles applied for different light fittings for book lights and lamps and motion lights. So there's ways you can kind of look at the type of light you're using in your home and your environment and go, how can we actually switch this out to use something that's going to be more appropriate to not have such unwanted effects on my biology in the evening, sort of thing.
How about you? So basically, is it with the same light bulb you can actually change the frequency, but you have to use different light bulbs for the different frequencies that you want?
We've got both options. So we do now have a single light bulb that you can just change by turning it off and on. So that one's a really cool one. But we also do have just like straight, like an amber blue blocking light bulb that can just be used in the evening. We found that was just a little bit annoying because you might have to then you kind of go, oh, don't turn these lights on at night, but turn these ones on during the day. So then we tried to create a bulb where you could have both in the same one and just control it through the light switch. So that's a really handy one that took us a number of years to actually come up with the solution for that. But yeah, that's essentially right. You've got a day and a night bulb that you can use the single source for any time of the day sort of thing.
This is some serious biohacking. I'm loving it because it sounds like you've really learned about the effect of light on the body and the different spectrums of light. Something a lot of people probably don't put too much attention to. They just think, I just need light, get a light bulb. But you've gone into quite a lot of depth to understand how they affect the body and then created a product that can be tailored to what the body needs at a specific time. And you can either do that with an individual light bulb, or you can just change that light bulb with the light switch so it emits the right kind of light that you need at that time. So I guess you just have to get that wired in by the electrician. Is that right? In terms of the switches?
No, so that's the great thing about these. These are just like they replace into your typical light fitting, and then they're just operated through the existing light switch. So you can just take out your existing bulbs, put these ones in, and then you just go over to your light switch, and then the way it knows to change mode is when you turn it off and then turn it back on again, it kind of will cycle to the next mode sort of thing. So that's the, yeah, there's no.
It feels easy to do. It's just putting a light bulb in, basically.
That's it, yeah.
And what about people that are going off to work, like you used to work in a big office and you were exposed to light, you were working IT, so you're probably on your computer all day, maybe working long hours like we all do. What about those people that maybe their office doesn't have those light bulbs? Is there any way for them to protect themselves and to get exposure to the right light other than going out in the morning and having the right light bulbs at home at night? What should they do in the day?
Yeah, and that's it. This is the really tricky one because obviously, yeah, we don't have as much control over the light environment in a workplace. And that was the same for myself. So there's a couple of things you can do. So the first thing is absolutely right. What you said is, first of all, get outside in the morning before you go to work and get exposure to the light frequencies from the sun. That's really one of the most important times to get outside is first thing in the morning. That's what anchors and sets your circadian rhythm. It essentially instructs the brain that the day started, and it really helps entrain that cycle to continue every day. And so obviously if it knows it's first thing in the morning by the right light signals, then it's going to know that sort of 12 hours later, it's going to be evening. So it's very important to get that exposure in the morning to ensure that it continues on the correct cycle. But beyond that, once you're at work, a really important thing to do is just to try and even just get outside for regular breaks. So go outside for lunch and just eat your lunch outside. You don't have to be, it's just like being outside, you don't have to be staring at the sun or anything. You just need to be outside, and that the light frequencies are all around you. And I even like to say, like, a lot of, people will go outside for a smoke break. Just tell your boss you're going outside for a light break sort of thing. Like 5 minutes outside, just a couple times a day is going to really, really help again and train the circadian rhythm. It's going to tell that because the different light frequencies are changing based on the time of the day. So then the brain actually understands that the light frequencies are changing, what it's receiving. And it's almost like a check into your internal clock with the clock of nature as well. But beyond that, when you're actually in working, there's a few things you can do. So the first thing would be to look for a really good quality set of blue light glasses. Now, they need to be the right type of blue light glasses because you don't want to wear the wrong type for the wrong time of the day. So if you were to say get a pair of like the nighttime glasses, which will completely eliminate the blue light frequency, that would almost tell your brain it's nighttime when it's daytime, and it will start to cause what we call like a circadian rhythm mismatch. So you kind of need to just lower the blue light frequencies down that you're being exposed to because they're far too high, but you still actually need them for mood and energy regulation. So you want to get a set of glasses that are designed in a way that will bring the blue light down by about 50% is really good. And you kind of, it's very, very difficult now to navigate out there because there is a lot of options. There's a lot of stuff on Amazon now, a lot of cheap things, and you've got to just make sure that the specifications of the glasses do specify the exact wavelengths that are being filtered and blocked and by how much. And you're really looking to ensure that the blue light over the whole spectrum is being reduced by 50%. Because it can be a few marketing tactics to trick you into thinking that they're blocking more than they are. And they'll talk about like UV light being blocked. And that's kind of not really an issue because there isn't any UV light indoors that you've been exposed to from the screen. So you just need to make sure that the specifications are well specified. So using them is really good. And so they're really good because you're in close proximity to a screen. It's protecting the eyes, which are the main signal into the brain, and your overhead lighting as well. But then there is one more thing you can do as well, as you can install a bit of software onto the computer you're using, and it's called either, there's two options. There's one called like Flux or F.Lux, and another one called Iris Tech. And what these do is you can manipulate the levels of blue light coming off the screen. So you can actually just bring the levels down so then it's not so bright and white. And so you're just getting a more balanced exposure to the blue light in the office during the daytime as well.
Feels like there's so many options now, and it's a bit of a minefield for people to know what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the glasses space, because it kind of became a very popular thing. So then I think a whole bunch of just like people or manufacturers just jumped on the bandwagon without really understanding the specifics around light and understanding exactly how much you shouldn't be filtering or blocking. So there's a bit of a science to it, and that's kind of where you just want to make sure you're not going and buying like a £5 set of glasses off Amazon, because there won't be much research behind them and there won't be much backing behind what they're actually doing. And it just concerns me that using something like gives you a false sense of hope that, oh yeah, I'm using them, therefore my eyes are protected, when potentially they're not. So it's quite important to just make sure you're using a trusted source, and they can actually show you the data and show you like and they kind of at least know what they're talking about when it comes to that light. So you do know you're getting the right sort of tools.
What kind of scientific backing have you got for the things that you're producing in your company, Block Blue Light?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've gone and looked at a lot of research around different light frequencies. So there's quite a lot of research in PubMed. And so what we found, if we're talking particularly, is when we kind of branch it down to two lights, we can look at the daytime, which we're kind of talking about now. There's a whole bunch of research looking at the different frequencies of light and the levels of energy that they produce. And so what they found was it was actually, so we kind of talked about light as wavelengths, and that's measured in nanometers. So blue light ranges from 400 to 500 nanometers. And what the actual issue is blue light, particularly at 455, about midway through that spectrum, is a very high frequency coming off screens and lighting. There's very little either side of that. So what we saw in the research was most of the screens and lighting that we are exposed to has this 455 nanometer frequency. So we need to ensure that the products we create to use to filter that down need to be filtering that exact frequency down. So that's why we talk a lot about it on our website, and we do a lot of things like using spectrometer reports, so we can kind of test the lenses and show that we're reducing that frequency down, because that's actually the most important one to bring down, because that's the predominant one we're being exposed to. So that's kind of what we do in terms of research there, and just ensuring that we can back up any sort of claims like, hey, it does this or it does that. Well, here's the evidence with the device to test it, sort of thing. And it's a similar.
Go on.
I was about to say, it's a similar thing when we look at the evening as well, because you can buy a set of orange glasses or an orange tinted glasses, but they still don't actually remove the blue light frequencies. And that's quite a common thing. You'll see some cheap ones that may look like they're going to do the job, but when you actually run them through a spectral analysis or a proper machine, you actually see that they're not blocking the blue light. So again, there was a piece of research that came out in 2001, and what it looked at all frequencies of light, not just blue, and its impact on our melatonin levels. So we talked about melatonin being a sleep hormone. It's actually much more than that, like you alluded to. But it looked at the natural levels and how much it was suppressed by based on different frequencies of light. And what that found was quite interesting, because it found that it wasn't just blue light that was actually suppressing melatonin in the evenings. So blue light actually on the spectrum, the next color next to blue light is green light. And so what it found was the melatonin suppression curve continued into the green light spectrum about 3/4 of the way in. So the peak of suppression was about midway through blue light, but it continued on a downward curve, but continued right into the green light frequency. So we kind of looked at that research and said, well, if we're only blocking blue light in the evenings and we're still getting exposed to some of this green light, well, we're still actually causing a signal of daytime and suppressing our melatonin to some degree. Not as much if we just block all the blue light, we certainly are helping significantly. But if we want to be completely optimal, we should really be aligning our products to this piece of research, which clearly shows a suppression signal past the blue light range. So that's why we then went away and developed our lenses and some of our lighting products to completely eliminate right up to that exact frequency of green light, to ensure that was all removed as well, just to make the product, what I would say, align with that piece of research and ensure that it's going to be the most optimal to use.
It's amazing that you actually tested what you're doing to make sure you actually got the right frequencies. We're about to talk a lot more about making sure you have the right light for your health and well-being and the importance of light, the right frequency, after a few messages from our commercial partner.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
You're listening to Dora Walsh on UK Health Radio on my weekly show, Nutrition for Health, Perfect Weight and Wellbeing. This week, we're talking about the importance of light for your health and well-being and making sure you get the right type of light and avoid the wrong type of light, because it can have devastating impacts on your health. It can affect the regeneration of your body, your sleep, your mood, your immunity. I'm speaking this week with Daniel Ebbett. He's the founder and CEO of Block Blue Light. You can find out more about their company on blockbluelight.co.uk and also follow them on social media at Block Blue Light Official. Daniel is an international blue light blocking expert, and we've talked a lot about the different frequencies and what can happen if you don't have the right frequency and all the things that you can do to protect yourself. And you seem to have a lot of research and a lot of knowledge about making sure that the body's exposed to the right frequency at the right time, the right color of light. What kind of feedback are you getting from the people that you're working with, your own customers, in terms of their experience and their health?
It's very wide ranging, the feedback we get, because particularly in the sleep realm, right? Because a lot of health and poor health can stream from not being able to sleep correctly and having poor sleep. So we really find when someone is able to get their sleep right, they're able to then start getting on that healing journey a lot quicker. So we get some amazing feedback around someone that's had insomnia for 20 years and then started using our lighting and glasses, and with a week, they're kind of sleeping through the night. And that kind of feedback's really amazing. And they're kind of talking about a shift in a lot of chronic health conditions starting to turn around. That stuff's amazing. And then beyond that, a lot of the daytime issues people experience with overexposure to blue light is headaches and migraines, eye strain. And that's particularly caused by too much of those frequencies during the day. So when they're able to put on those glasses I talked about in the office environment, a lot of feedback we're getting is they used to feel quite drained and their eyes are quite tired and sore at the end of the day. And they initially just thought that's just normal. A long day at work is quite hard and mentally draining, and they felt that way. But sort of after being able to actually kind of control or mitigate the frequencies of light they're being exposed to, they actually feel quite normal and quite energized still at the end of the day. So those are kind of the common kind of patterns we see between the day and the night with the feedback.
Fantastic. And you talk about a lot of different types of light. Are there any types of other lights that you're using as a therapy for people?
Yeah. So beyond looking at removal of the harmful spectrums at the wrong time of the day and the night, we actually have now started to look at how we can bring in more beneficial spectrums to upregulate healing and regenerative processes. And that's typically what we call red light therapy, which are particular high intensity devices that emit very specific frequencies of red and near-infrared light. And they can be used in a real therapeutic way, as opposed to just providing a light source to see in the evening with like a particular light source. These are used very close up to the body to be exposed to very specific frequencies that are shown to be very bioactive in the body. And what they can do is the very specific frequencies of near-infrared light can penetrate quite deep into the body, up to 3 inches in, and these frequencies of infrared light will activate our mitochondria, which actually within our cells, organelles that essentially create energy. So what these frequencies of light do, allow our mitochondria to create the energy currency, which is called ATP, a lot more efficiently. And so when that happens, the cell is working a lot more efficiently and correctly. It can really upregulate healing processes a lot faster and more efficiently. So a lot of people are using these devices to heal chronic conditions. They can help upregulate healing from injuries. A lot of athletes are using it for recovery. It's the benefits are very wide range in how it can help, because it's interfacing with the cells in that area to work more optimally. So things like brain conditions and stuff, it can really it's using light frequencies to allow the body to essentially upregulate its own healing processes more efficiently.
Now, that light, it can be detrimental, but it can be beneficial. And you kind of spent so much time researching all the different ways to use it in the most effective manner. So it is really inspirational to talk to you about it today. I've learned a lot. For anybody that's interested in making sure they have the right exposure to the right light, definitely encourage you to check out the website blockbluelight.co.uk, and also follow them on Block Blue Lights Official. And it's been lovely having you on the show, Daniel. Hopefully you'll come on the show again in the future to talk about lights as your research develops.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to. And yeah, just to add to that, if anyone is on the website and browsing things, we have a wealth of blogs and articles on there to try and break down the science into more digestible ways to understand it. So there's about 80 or 90 articles on there, ranging of all different topics of light. So I encourage people to, if they want to start learning a bit more about how different situations of light are impacting us, I'd really encourage them to jump on our blog and have a read of those articles.
Great. Well, I hope it's been great to have you on. And everybody listening today, I hope you've enjoyed listening to the show as much as I've enjoyed presenting the show. Definitely catch us again next week on UK Health Radio. And until then, goodbye.